Good morning. This is Michelle Nagel, and welcome to learning about emotional intelligence. Emotions are part of our everyday landscape, and so many people don't want to even admit them or acknowledge them, or they just don't want to admit that they have them, because we have a tendency to look at emotions as either good things or bad things. In reality, emotions are just barometers to let you know what is going on around in the world around you. And they have different vibrations. So if they are a high vibration, then those are the ones that make us feel good. And the low vibrations are the ones that make us feel bad. So it's a feeling that we get, a good feeling or a bad feeling. It doesn't mean that the emotion is a bad emotion or a good emotion. So they're part of human nature. They drive our learning, they drive our decision making and our creativity and all of those things. So I really am so glad that you decided to join me today to hear what I have to say about this. So let you know who I am. My name again is Michelle Nagel. I am the best-selling author of Suffering is Optional, Step Out of Darkness into the Light. I'm a trainer for Jack Canfield for the Success Principles, and I'm also a heart math trainer. Heart math is a way of helping people to live from the heart, which that's where the best parts of life come from. It doesn't mean that we, have to run around with our head in the clouds all the time. It means that we are involving our entire bodies, our entire soul, our entire mind into our lives. And the information that we get, this is so cool, the autonomic nervous system, we all have one, and it has two branches. And one of the branches is the sympathetic, which we often call the reptilian brain. And it gives information from the back of the brain down the spinal cord into the body. And of that 100% of information that goes from the brain down to the body, only 20% of it makes it back up from the body to the brain. On the other hand, the sympathetic is on the front of our bodies, and it goes from the body to the head. And 80% of the information that leaves the body stops at the heart first, and then it moves on up to the head. So the heart is the area that you get all of your intuition. It's where the Navy SEALs use heart math, and they call it their spidey senses. It's what lets them know what's going on around them. It's how you connect with other people. When you spend all your time in your head, then you really can't connect with anybody. It's like having headphones on, listening to Radio Me, because you're not able to interact with other people. And another really cool thing that you may not know is that the radius of our heart, we can radiate, they can measure 5 feet out from our body is our heart field. And so we interact with each other. We walk into each other's heart fields all the time. It's actually bigger than that, but they don't have the equipment to be able to measure it. Your head, on the other hand, where we think all of our intelligence and wisdom and knowledge and stuff is, only has a radius of 1 foot. So in order to actually connect with somebody with the head, you have to be really, really close to them. Probably a little closer than most of us are comfortable being to one another. But our heart field, we interact with heart fields all the time. Now think about this. You walk into a room and you can tell immediately if somebody in that room is mad, or you can tell if somebody in that room is really happy. You feel it. We talk about these things like a gut feeling, butterflies in your stomach, heartbreak. It's all the stuff that our body is telling, the information that our body is telling us. And so it's really important that we understand, again, to reiterate what I said, that emotions are neither good nor bad. They're just barometers. Sometimes it's really appropriate to be angry, because sometimes it's really appropriate to have the fight or flight. Not always. Sometimes it is appropriate, though. It's not a bad thing. It says, if you're angry, it says to you, like, hey, this is not good for me. This is not what I want. This is not making me happy. It's just information. And then you can go, oh, well, I'm not happy with this situation. What can I do to change it? Or do I need to step back a little bit so I can regroup or whatever? It's a way for us to be able to determine how we want to respond to our lives rather than doing the knee-jerk reaction, which 9 times out of 10 will get us into a lot of trouble. So again, I'm really excited that you're here, and I'm going to fiddle with this for a little bit so we can get the, I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see the PowerPoint presentation. I'll get it here. Technology is always so much fun. Okay, play from the start. There we go. So emotions are innately part of human nature. They drive our learning, decision-making, creativity, relationships, and health. Try having a relationship with somebody without having your emotions involved. Essentially, they play a leading role in every moment of our lives and are part of the outcome of every choice we make. Although we all have feelings and emotions, accurately expressing them to other people is often hard to do. It leads to resentment, frustration, and in general, just a lack of healthy communication. So during the next hour, my main goal is to help give you the tools you need to accurately and effectively communicate with other people in your lives so that you can sustain healthy and happy relationships that are built on an honest and respectful foundation. So let's get started. As soon as I can figure out how to turn these silly things on. There we go. Welcome again. So I'm sure that most of you have heard the term emotional intelligence. It's kind of a new term because we didn't want to, again, pretend that we had emotions. But it's a newer term, emotional intelligence. We've talked about IQ, intelligence quotients, and we've known that our whole lives. But this one is just a little bit more different. It's often used in the world of industrial and organizational psychology to describe people who are, in short, good at communicating competently with others. So emotional intelligence has become the latest buzzword because corporations are realizing what an important trait it is for people, especially in leadership roles. Imagine how important emotional intelligence is if you are serving a client or a patient, or if you're interacting with your family members. It's a really important thing. So from resolving disputes to solving complex social problems and negotiating deals, emotional intelligence is crucial in navigating any professional or personal relationship that involves communication. Our emotional intelligence is what helps us explore daily social interactions with an understanding of others and how we behave around them. If you want to be an effective leader, partner, or just learn how to get your words and thoughts across in a better way, your goal should be to increase your emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is also called EQ, or emotional quotient. You may also hear or see people referring to it as EI. Emotional intelligence is the ability to identify and manage your own emotions towards others. It's generally said to include 3 skills: emotional awareness, the ability to harness emotions and apply them to tasks like thinking and problem solving, and the ability to manage emotions, which includes regulating your own emotions and cheering up or calming down other people. When was the last time you needed to exercise your emotional intelligence to be able to help somebody else manage theirs? With high emotional intelligence, your close relationships benefit. You gain the ability to read people's feelings easier, and perhaps more importantly, you learn how to identify and regulate your own emotions, which is really critically important. I spoke to somebody recently and asked them how they felt about something, and they said, I couldn't really tell you, because they have no emotional intelligence. Unlabeled emotions often go misunderstood, which leads to irrational choices and counterproductive actions. People with high emotional intelligence master their emotions because they understand them, and they use words to describe them to others in ways that are as specific as possible. When was the last time somebody asked you how you felt and you said, I don't know? So, for example, while many people might describe their mood as bad, emotionally intelligent people can pinpoint whether they are feeling frustrated, disappointed, anxious, or irritable. See how that's much more specific? So throughout the class, I'm going to offer some replacement words that act as more specific ways to describe your current emotion. So take notes and test them out next time you're going to try to get your point across to somebody you're having a conversation with, or somebody kind of blows up in a way that you weren't expecting. So instead of saying that you're afraid, scared, or fearful, use this list to pinpoint exactly how you feel so that you may more appropriately convey your emotions. Instead of being scared, you can say you're frightened or terrified. Those are two different volumes. Frightened can be very small. Terrified is usually very large and is very specific. Anxious can use the words overwhelmed or worried. A lot of us spend a lot of our lives being anxious. And we think about overwhelm all the time, but we don't think about overwhelm as being anxious. Insecure. We could use the words inferior or inadequate instead. Submissive would be insignificant or worthless. And we don't often think of those as being words that you can replace. Rejected. Instead of saying I feel rejected, how about if you said I feel alienated or inadequate? Those convey very different feelings. Humiliated. Instead of saying that you're feeling humiliated, you could feel disrespected or ridiculed. And those are words, if you were to use the word ridiculed or disrespected, those are words that allow for the conversation to continue. Instead of just saying, I feel humiliated, which is kind of a defensive kind of a comment. So when you're feeling grossed out or uncomfortable or generally uneasy, look at these kinds of words. How could you replace these words to describe how you're feeling? Disapproving could be judgmental or loathing. Again, feel the different vibrations between these words. Disappointed could be repugnant or revolted. Awful, I feel awful, could be revulsion or detestable. I feel detestable. Have you ever used that? Avoidant. I feel avoidant. I could say I feel aversion to that thing, or I feel hesitant. Replacement words for sad would be if you're feeling blue and you don't have any idea why. How many of us feel that way? A lot of times we just feel sad and don't really know why. But if you try replacing it with these words, maybe they will help you better understand and feel what your emotions are. And also you can convey it then to other people. So if you're feeling like guilty, you would say remorseful or ashamed, which are two different words. I mean, all three of those words have different nuances to them. Abandoned, ignored, victimized. Instead of despair, powerlessness, or you feel vulnerable. Depressed, that one's an easy one. We often just say, oh, I'm so depressed. We feel inferior or empty. Lonely would be abandoned or isolated. And bored would be apathetic or indifferent. You know, you can also replace words for happy. I have somebody who shouted at me the other day, I'm so happy. Actually, he wasn't. I think he was being very defensive. But instead of saying, I feel happy, which normally when somebody says that, it's not shouted, you can describe this instead, because these words would then express your emotions in a much different way. So you could feel optimistic, or you could feel inspired or open. When you want to be intimate, you could be playful or sensitive. Peaceful, you could use that word, or you could use hopeful or loving. Powerful could be provocative or courageous. Accepted could be fulfilled or respected. Proud is important or confident. Interested could be inquisitive or amused. And joyful could be ecstatic and liberated. Now, see the expansion of words that you've just been given that have much greater nuances to them than just the words that we most regularly use. And I bet if you used them, it would help the connection with other people, because it would cause them to pause and really hear what you're saying. Now we got replacement words for anger. When we get hurt, it's really easy to lash out, and we've all been there. So I find this list especially helpful when it's time to come back and apologize for actions or words that were done or said in haste. So refer to this list when you're explaining why you acted in an uncharacteristic way. We could say, I was really hurt. But if we explain a little further and say, I was embarrassed or devastated, that will lead to the possibility of conversation. I feel threatened. Could be, I feel insecure. Or even, I feel jealous. I feel hateful. Could be, I feel resentful, or I feel violated. You could be mad. You could say, I'm furious or enraged. Just the depth of mad and enraged. Those are so much different. And sometimes you feel the difference of the emotion like that. Aggressive could be, I feel provoked, or I feel hostile. Frustrated. How many times a day do we get frustrated? That could be infuriated or irritated. Shows different levels of the emotion. Distant. I feel distant. Well, that doesn't really tell me much. You could use, I feel withdrawn, which is usually, I do that to protect myself. Or I feel suspicious, which means I don't really trust what's coming along. Or if you say, I feel critical, then it could be, I feel skeptical or sarcastic. So example is, I'm sorry if I was short with you yesterday at work. I was feeling insecure after the meeting with our superior because I felt that maybe I was letting her down with my work. So being upset with somebody and then going on to explain exactly the nuance of the emotion that you're feeling makes it so that you can then have a conversation and you can then work through whatever the problem is. It's really, really helpful. Here's some replacement words for surprise. So surprises can either be a good thing or a bad thing. I'm judging by the picture. She just got something really good that happened to her. But surprise can bring out emotions in us that are difficult to explain. So this list would help you understand your reactions to surprises that pop up in your life unexpectedly. You could be excited. We say that all the time. Oh, I'm so excited. But you could also be energetic or eager. If you're amazed, you could be astonished or in awe. Astonished can either be a good thing or a bad thing. I'm absolutely astonished that that individual chose to behave that way. Or I'm really astonished. That's so cool. Confused could be perplexed or disillusioned. And startled could be dismayed or shocked. Expanding our emotional vocabulary helps us communicate effectively with those around us, which keeps our relationships healthy. This is a crucial building block in raising a socially competent child. Fortunately, if you weren't raised as a socially competent child, you can raise yourself now and teach yourself how to be socially competent. Many parents provide their children with basic words to describe their emotions like mad, sad, happy, scared, and angry. While this is a good start, we often overlook the more specific vocabulary that would really be very helpful. So my number one piece of advice is to sit down with your child or children and create your own emotions chart by drawing from those words that I provided in the last couple of slides. Draw emoji-like faces to represent each emotion and talk through what each word means. Then, when your child seems sad, angry, or scared, walk them over to the reference list in order to better understand what's going on in their world. By starting this practice early, your children and you will slowly become more and more familiar with the words and be able to use them without referencing the list. But their emotional intelligence and their emotional quotient will have increased substantially beyond the little words like mad, sappy, well, maybe, mad, sad, happy, scared, and angry. So, kids are like sponges. They pick up on every little thing, including the way that you define and label your feelings. Give you a little hint, everybody else that you live with, whether you have children or not, also pick up on exactly what you're feeling. So by using a wide range of words to define how you feel, children around you will learn how to identify and name a variety of emotions of their own. For example, instead of swearing at a computer when it freezes, say something like, I am so frustrated that this keeps happening, and I'm worried that I won't get my work done in time if I can't fix it. Oftentimes, swearing might feel a little bit better than trying to actually identify the emotion that you're feeling, but it's not really a good way to express yourself. I believe it was Mark Twain who said something along the lines of profanity is for those individuals who are not able to express themselves any other way. And certainly in a business environment, profanity is not a good way to be expressing yourself. So build your own emotional quotient. The first step in building your emotional intelligence is coming to terms with your own emotions and understanding that your feelings are valid. If you're angry, that's valid. If you're scared, that's valid. Don't ever try to tell yourself that your emotions aren't valid, because they are. Remember, again, it's a barometer. It's telling you that something in your world needs to be addressed or you need to pay attention to. So to practice this acceptance, sit down at least once a day and ask yourself how you're feeling. Think of this as a brief meditation or an act of self-care, and just allow yourself the space to touch base with yourself and your emotions. Eventually, this act will become second nature, and you'll be able to better understand your own train of thought and what's affecting your behavior that day. Emotions are very much like children. They just want to be acknowledged. They're going to jump up and down, and they're going to do everything they can to try to get your attention. They want to get your attention. Often that's all you need to do is put your attention on them, acknowledge them, and then they'll go away. It's like a pat on the head. Oh, good, they noticed. Now, don't judge yourself when you're feeling crummy. It's okay not to feel happy all the time. In fact, it's healthy to not feel happy all the time. Even though it seems sometimes that everyone around you is doing great all the time, I promise you that in reality, they're going through their own waves of emotion and turmoil just like you. You can't judge life by what everybody posts on Facebook, because most of the time people only post their highest moments on Facebook. And if that's all you get to see all the time, that can really begin to make you feel really depressed and like you're not keeping up somehow. It's not true. Things that we write in magazine articles, things that we see on Facebook, those are all curated experiences. They're not people's individual blow by blow life experiences. And it's difficult to not compare ourselves to that because everybody else looks like they're having such a great time. But always remind yourself that you don't really know what's going on because they're not posting that. So don't dismiss your feelings before you've had the chance to think them through. If you're feeling a certain way and it's affecting your day, take the time to think about what might be causing the emotions and remember that it's okay to feel bad sometimes. And if you're not really good at identifying what your emotions are, this is an excellent, excellent practice so that you'll know what you're feeling and pay attention to your body, because if you don't, it's going to stay in your body and eventually make you sick. Emotions that we don't express get trapped in our body, and that's why people end up having horrible diseases, because those are trapped emotions that did not get fixed. So see if you can find any connections between your feelings and the things that are happening when they come up. Of course, the best way to start doing this is to consult with a professional psychiatrist, but you can take steps to do it yourself too. I think you need a professional psychiatrist only if it is something that you cannot deal with by yourself. You know, what's really interesting is a lot of people try to do all the self-help stuff without a guide or a coach or a mentor or a helper, without a professional to help them. And they think, oh, I can deal with this on my own. But we are so good at protecting ourselves from anything that's painful, because that's what we're supposed to do. Our body does that for us. Our mind is going, whoa, that's painful, I'm not going to go there. And so it builds walls inside us. Somebody from the outside can see straight through those walls. And so if you're trying to do all the deep work by yourself without a coach or a helper, you're going to sidestep all of the things that need to be dealt with. And then you'll say things like, oh, well, I tried that, but that didn't work for me. Well, it didn't work for you because you are an expert at protecting yourself from harm. Your individual who's helping you, the coach, also will protect you from harm, but they will also bring up those things so that you can look at them face to face. You can only heal when you turn and face what's in your past and then help it, acknowledge it, and then you're able to walk forward and make the progress that you want to make. So assess your current emotional state. Write this down. How are you feeling right this minute? Take note of what's going on in your mind. Maybe jot it down in a journal, on a notepad, or in your notes on your phone, or if you have a really good memory, just take a mental note. And you can also enlist a friend or a partner to help. And sometimes just saying how you feel out loud can help you analyze them and make connections about what's causing your discomfort. It's not the emotion that is causing your discomfort. It is something going on that's asking for you to address it. So if you find yourself holding back tears at work today after a coworker said something to you that normally wouldn't affect you, refer to the list of emotions and think back to other times that you felt that way. And then try to make connections. Discover whether your emotional state is reflective of the current situation or another more deeply rooted insecurity or something from your past that has gotten triggered. Have you ever been around somebody who, it doesn't matter what you say, you open your mouth and they get mad at you? It's really possible that it's not you. It's something about you triggers something that's going on in them. Connect your feelings with your thoughts. When you're feeling an unusual emotion, it's always useful to ask, what do I think about that? And recognize that you're experiencing that emotion for a reason. As you're analyzing and assessing your emotions, it's normal for contradicting thoughts to pop up. In psychology, this is called cognitive dissonance. And in academia, this is the stage that happens right before you experience a paradigm shift, like when your perspective changes and you begin to learn something new. So just run with it and grow your understanding. There's always something going on in the world that will cause emotions to rise. Watch or listen to a news station that's nonpartisan, or in other words, one that doesn't offer editorial opinions. Try NPR, for example. Then take the time to think about how the news makes you feel. Listen to each thought or feeling as you would as a witness in a courtroom. Pay attention to every thought and argument that comes into your mind, even if it doesn't fit your usual perspective. This exercise will help you better understand and navigate through the emotions of others as they express their feelings to you. You might not feel the same way, but taking the time to learn how to understand and accept the feelings of others as valid is crucial to increasing your emotional intelligence. We don't have to agree with everybody all the time, but if we're able to understand where they're coming from, then that puts us on the state of communication, actual communication, understanding, and empathy, which are pretty valid and pretty important emotions. This is important too. Your body is going to give you clues to your unconscious feelings, because again, especially if you haven't been paying attention to the emotions that are going on in your life, oftentimes when they show up, you can't recognize them. So a knot in your stomach forms when you're nervous or stressed. Experiencing butterflies around a person you're romantically interested in is a sensation that highlights the feelings you have for another person. You might feel a lump forming in your throat when you're feeling mentally exhausted and ready to burst into tears. I feel a lump in my throat sometimes when I have something I want to say, but I'm afraid to say it. It's like it gets trapped right there. So for me, when I feel that lump in my throat, it means that I am not speaking my truth. When your body is a great way to gauge how you feel. Your physical feelings are legitimate indicators that help bring attention to feelings that your brain wants you to address. So next time you're feeling unfamiliar or an uncomfortable sensation, take a minute to assess how you're feeling emotionally. It might take you a little while to identify it, but the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. It's hard to process emotions, and sometimes they can overwhelm you. One of my favorite ways to move through uncomfortable feelings is to address them head on by writing them down. Sure, it may not seem like much, but it's incredible how much jotting down your thoughts can take pressure off your psyche and relieve discomfort. And you can write all of the mean, nasty, horrible things that you want to say. You can write them down. It's not going to harm the paper. But if you were to write, or if you were to say those things to somebody else, it would probably seriously damage your relationship. The notes don't have to be grammatically correct or even legible. Don't think about it too much. Just scribble your thoughts down as they come. And you'll be very surprised how efficiently you can assess when you see them written down on paper. So you can write them down on paper, and you can then look at them after. You're going to be surprised at how, when you're writing them down, that actually will help relieve the pressure, like you're letting the gauge, you're letting the steam loose. And then you can go back and look at it and ask yourself, am I really feeling that? Or am I feeling something different? And just sit with it for a minute. It will really help you with your ability to be much more emotionally intelligent and understand what's going on in your own mind. So question your own opinions to increase empathy. So these days, it's easy to fall into an opinion bubble, or what others call echo chambers. When we get news and opinions from people who have the same perspective as we do, we miss out on learning the viewpoints of other people. When we block out and ignore the way others feel, we're missing out on practicing empathy. This also limits us from actively working to understand the perspective of others. When you take the time to say, how would I feel in that situation? Then it will help so that you can understand other people much better. You know, sometimes you'll have a client that comes in, or a patient or somebody, and they'll come into your office and they're just cranky. And everything they say feels like an attack. It's like a porcupine walked into your office and you've got to deal with the porcupine. Well, the natural tendency would be to back away or perhaps to turn into a porcupine yourself. But that's not really a good way to deal with people. So you could begin asking questions to listen to what they have to say. And maybe they tell you then that they had a really bad morning, and your listening to them could be all that it takes to turn their day around. Those who have high IQs can use their empathy to listen to many different viewpoints without judgment, then make a decision that makes the most sense. This allows them to not succumb to emotionally charged arguments. Think of it as diplomacy. To build your empathy muscle, think about the things that you feel strongly about, and then ask yourself why you feel that way. Understanding the root of your emotions and passions is essential to breaking down why you react to things the way that you do. Sometimes you're responding because that's the way your parents raised you, or because that was the way you were programmed. And you can then at that point ask yourself, well, is that how I want to feel? Is that what I want to think? Is that how I want to behave? So to be more accepting and emotionally literate, you're going to have to shift the way that you think, as well as the way that you perceive, and that's probably going to cause some discomfort. So to get started, try this exercise. Maybe you don't understand what the big deal is if somebody decides that they want to eat vegan, for example. Every time you encounter a vegan, you find yourself feeling slightly annoyed. So why is that? Explore your feelings by making a list of qualities that you appreciate within veganism, and then try to understand what formed these opinions. Is your opinion based on remarks made by somebody you respect? You know, you can exchange veganism with the vaccine initiative, with what's going on in politics. Just replace it with whichever is jerking your chain right now. So now try to initiate some cognitive dissonance. So you could Google vegan celebrities, or Google the politician you're feeling irritated with, or Google the both sides of the vaccine debate. So you might be surprised at what you find on that list, and probably at least one person that you don't expect is either for or against whatever it is that you're studying about. So going back to veganism again, read a think piece from the perspective of a vegan and try to find some points that you can agree with. This exercise will help you shift your perspective by introducing new information that expands your current knowledge. That, in turn, will help you understand the emotions of others. So if you're in a conflict with somebody and you have a moment, ask yourself everything you know about that person. Not what other people have told you about that person, but what you yourself know about that person because of your knowledge and interactions with them. Can you figure out what kind of a family life they have? Where were they raised? What kinds of things were they taught? What kinds of experiences have they had in their life? When you can do that, you can begin to develop empathy for them, because you can think, wow, they were raised in a really abusive household. I can see why they would be a little bit prone to being hypersensitive, or maybe they might get angry a little faster than normal, or maybe I can see how this situation might feel threatening to them. It puts you in a place where you can begin to have compassion, empathy, and understanding for somebody else. And it certainly is going to make things easier as far as communication, because all of us just want to be understood. So some of the sources that I used to put together this class was from Lifehacker. increase your emotional intelligence by expanding your emotions. Then life hacker again, find the perfect word for your feelings. And Psychology Today talks about the basics of emotional intelligence. And so I've used a bunch of different places like that, from mostly psychology. I am thrilled that you decided to join me today for this experience, and I hope that you've gained some tools you need to get started on becoming more emotionally intelligent as a friend, a parent, a partner, or a coworker. And I hope that you take some time to dive into some of the suggested exercises to expand your perspective and use the added vocabulary list to better communicate with those around you. And thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. I'm going to turn the video back on and stop sharing my screen. Does anybody have any questions? If you would like to put something in the chat, I would be happy to answer your questions. It'd be kind of fun to know exactly who's here. I'm really excited to see you guys. Okay, no chats. So thank you very much. Please go to my, oh, hello, Erin, thank you. Please go to Michelle at isoulshift.com, SOULSHIFT.com. And I also have a podcast, which is it's called Roar to Win. It's on iTunes, and I talk with lots of experts that also give information on emotional intelligence, on resilience, optimism, accountability, and resourcefulness. And that would be a really great thing for you guys to listen to if you're interested in doing that. But if you have any questions or if you'd like to contact me, my specialty is working with people who look like they have it all on the outside, but feel like they're falling apart on the inside. And I help them to kind of get their lives back in balance again, so that not only do they look like they have it all together on the outside, but they feel like they have it all together on the inside. And I'd love to have a conversation with you. So again, if you want to reach out to me at michelle@isoulshift.com, I would love to have that conversation. So thank you again so much for coming, and have a marvelous day.